being emotional.
The power of a mallet. Thank you for your attention. I'd like to call this Education Committee meeting to order and recognize that we are on the traditional territory of the Sunamo people. And little research I did many years ago, that territory includes Gabriola Island's False Narrows, formerly known as Clíchlu, which means rich place, and this was a site of a winter village, and they had very large clam beds over there. Just a little bit of history of our Sunamo family and friends. Do we have any additions to this evening's agenda? Seeing none. Deletions to the agenda? Seeing none. Change in order? Approval of the agenda?
Objection.
No objection. Approval of the minutes from the May 2nd, 2018 meeting from the Education Committee held May 2nd. And do I have any objections to the approval of those minutes? Seeing none. Move on with presentations. Dr. Hasselbeck.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and members of the committee, as well as your guests, and you have a good number of them here this evening. I like coming back to the board at least once a year, and first of all to remind that I am your school medical officer, and that has other functions as well. But I did say last year that we should talk about cannabis. And here we are a year later, and I figured we should actually talk about cannabis. Whether you support or not support the general direction that's occurring, we are going to see legalization of cannabis over the next year, and that's going to have impacts not just on the school, but on the whole community. Good to be understanding what those are and planning as much as possible. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the science, because there's lots of controversy about it. Get a little bit into what is actually recommended, and particularly how that plays out with youth and young adults, and some of the recommended suggestions I would bring to the school district to consider in order to be prepared for the upcoming months. This nice little graphic actually talks about any sort of substance use, but it's that continuum that begins with experimentation, goes into the socialization component of it, perhaps regularization on the weekends, and not everyone proceeds along this circle, but some get into problematic, harmful use and dependent use. And I think we want to try to maximize whatever benefits there may be and minimize those risks, and that's the focus of the conversation. What we do know is, at the moment, youth are using cannabis at about twice the rate of adults, generally speaking, and our rates in Canada are running about 12% amongst adults, and that's for any use in the previous year. Now, for an illicit activity, one has to remember legalization is probably going to see some increase in intensity, increase in proportion that are sort of the frequency that people are using it. But if we look to places like Colorado and Washington, not necessarily an increase in the number of people that are actually using. I think over time we're probably going to see that. And as we look at what's happened with, generally speaking, the Canadian population, over time we have seen that increase over the last decade. Here in BC, we are running about 50% higher than the Canadian rate. We're up around 17% utilization. And most people in BC probably aren't too surprised about that. Our youth rates I've seen higher than the general Canadian youth rates as well, so that's something to remember. Actually, I'm going to skip a couple of these here. I'm not here to argue for or against cannabis. You can get others in, and that's a great debate, and it's a great educational debate to get students engaged in at this point in time. I don't think we've actually had enough of that. What I'm going to say is that there are proponents that will identify relative benefits, whether they are medicinal or whether they are of a recreational or pleasure-seeking activity. There are, however, some definite medical risks associated with this, and I'm going to flag at least those that are related to youth, and some of the concerns about long-term sustained use of cannabis and a loss of some of their cognitive function, which may be a problem for adulthood. There are a variety of organizations in Canada and elsewhere that have looked at the issue of cannabis, and if there's one thing that they're consistent in saying is it's probably not a good idea for youth to be either experimenting or using, and that the lowest age that we should be looking at utilization is about 25. The major risk here is actually the development of chronic persistent mental illness, psychotic breaks, and about a 40% increase. Not something that I think that we would want to see youth engaged in, but also not something I hear an awful lot about the conversation about what are those risks to youth at this point in time. Others have established what we call harm reduction-based activities, safer use guidelines. I share them with you. I won't go through them, but some ways of actually avoiding some of the longer-term harms, both in terms of utilization, but an increasing concern actually relates to the physical smoking component, where, not surprising, recent data are coming out that suggests that it's as bad, if not worse, than tobacco smoking. Okay. Now, with newer delivery devices that I'm going to share with you, there may be some ways of mitigating that, but we probably are going to see long-term consequences from repetitive use, particularly in the smoking component. Over the last couple of months, we've had the opportunity to start seeing the new legislation and what does this look like, and I flagged some of the key components when it comes to youth. One is that in British Columbia, the minimum purchase age will be 19. It will also be a criminal offense, a federal offense, to sell, distribute, or give youth under the age of 19 cannabis. Okay, so that's a fairly strong statement. Provincially, there'll be a piece of legislation that actually does not allow minors under the age of 19 to possess cannabis, and that may be handled in a similar fashion to alcohol, where it's taken away as the major deterrent at that point in time. There will also be other components that at a federal level are really focused in on reducing the attractiveness of cannabis to youth. And I think that, again, speaks to the concerns that are out there, that while there may be some benefits and some perceived benefits to older adults, that we should not be projecting that onto the youth of our communities. So, as a school district, hopefully you're aware that there are a variety of resources that are available, and certainly as we've gone through the opioid crisis of the last couple of years, I think we've engaged in some of these conversations. I'm still encouraging, and we can't necessarily have that conversation about the ongoing utilization of iMinds as a curriculum base. That should be something that all students have an opportunity to be at least aware of and engaged in that conversation. It's not specific to cannabis, but it does lead to healthier decision making and choices over substances in general. The second major thing that I'd be encouraging through the Education Committee in particular is how conversations about cannabis are actually happening in the classroom, because they're not necessarily happening more broadly at this point. And youth are being exposed to a fair bit of messaging. One of those key messages is we're about to legalize this product, therefore it must be safe. That is not the case. Okay, we're legalizing it because of the reductions in gang warfare, the reductions in the violence associated with the current criminal distribution. It's not necessarily being legalized as a good product. Okay, people ask me, alcohol, cannabis, and I'm going to say, yeah, alcohol and cannabis, you can weigh them out. Okay, and we know alcohol is not a benign product either. And certainly available are the resources through Discovery Family Youth Services, and I absolutely encourage, and I know The school district actually engages that group fairly frequently. I would hope others also consider bringing them along, using the resources that they have available. You are going to have to look at some policies. Okay. One that I encourage is actually mirror alcohol policies when it comes to no on-site consumption and no intoxication. Okay. We may get into conversations about medical and non-medical use, though from a medical perspective it is still not recommended under the age of 25. There are some non-physician prescribers that actually do make it available, and that becomes a challenge. You're also going to be challenged with what are the employee policies. Okay. That's an issue for all employers, and I think even as a health organization we're grappling with that one, because we're not going to be talking about a legalized product, and certainly we have high sensitivity professions where we do not want people impaired in the process of undertaking the work that they're undertaking. And one has to remember, we have a whole variety of other drugs out there that are used frequently for a variety of disorders and conditions, all of which may have side effects. So this is not an easy one to grapple with, and one that I encourage you to begin the conversations with, and something that from a medical perspective we probably should be assisting in some of those conversations. When it comes to the use and the management of use on school property, the easiest one to grapple with is going to be smoking. Edibles are not going to be considered legal initially, but within about 12 months we expect that there will be a regulatory environment under which the safe production and quality control of those edibles are such that they're truly dose delivery systems that can be utilized. The federal government has committed to this, though they haven't said that when that will actually be done. They say it's going to be about a year. Self-prepared edibles, however, are not illegal. So you can purchase your own oil, you can bake it up yourself, and you can actually carry it. And that will still be the case going forward. So as long as it's for personal consumption, edibles are still okay. And you begin to see why this now becomes a challenge when it comes to a policy control perspective. The one that's going to challenge all of us are some of the newer non-smoke, non-vaping electronic delivery systems that are available. This is also true for nicotine. Kind of not different than looking like a USB stick. And you can just imagine getting a dose in that fashion. There'll be no vapor eluted from that. And these are not much different from, let's say, an asthma inhaler. So we're going to have new dose delivery systems for drug products, and some of these are actually available at this point in time. They're not easy to get a hold of, but you will start seeing them, I would say, within 12 to 24 months. And what does that mean in terms of utilization on school property? I need to touch just briefly on things like excessive use. We've had incidents with the school district this year where individuals have probably overconsumed edibles. The problem with edibles is that the absorption of the active ingredient is highly variable. So typically somebody takes one and gets no reaction, so they takes another one, or it didn't work the first time, I'll take twice as much. And then a few hours later they're down and out and basically non-responsive. That becomes a problematic in the environment of the opioid crisis, because we've actually had questioning, and I don't expect any educators to be able to distinguish between the two, because a non-responsive individual becomes a crisis situation. I know we've been grappling with that with some school districts, schools, and trying to avoid those sort of circumstances, but I think it also begins to speak to a symptom of a problem where excessive use is being undertaken. Certainly when we get into the chronic use and dependency components, and we are seeing that among students, that this is where discovery becomes really helpful in terms of the ongoing therapeutic relationship. We're going to be there. Not clearly defined a lot of what these provincial resources are. Island Health is really concerned about what the implications are, not just for students, but generally speaking. We've been monitoring what's been going on in Colorado, Washington, and other states where legalization has occurred. We do expect that we're going to see increases in certain problems like motor vehicle crashes. Okay. I'm not sure that we're going to see decreases in other health issues, but some of that is actually occurring in other settings as well. We've actually worked, and I think Mr. Elsinger has been involved with provision of workshops to adults and parents so that they can engage in this conversation with their youth. And again, it's something I'd encourage become more standard as an expectation in schools rather than a one-off by a teacher who might be interested. Reminder of what Discovery has available in terms of resources. It's that broad range, just from way up front prevention information that can be shared with parents to the actual counseling and intervention components. Most of us have been going through this continuum of reactions. I'm not interested in cannabis. It's not going to affect me. Well, maybe we're going to see some things, and maybe I should be starting to look at this. And yeah, it's getting to be very real. We're actually going to see legalization probably in September, okay, which is going to coincide with the start of the school year. My question is, are you ready? Or what can we do together so that we can get ready? Because I know we can do something. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to take any questions you may have.
Questions?
Thank you for your presentation. Obviously, it's a major concern, and you clarified a little bit in there. It's about edibles, and you know, they're to be found everywhere, and it's clear that they are not going to be legal moving forward. What my struggle is with the edibles is so people tell me they're shaped like candies and chocolate and things like that. So that entices young people.
Yes, thank you. I'm going to say, I think it's one of the reasons why we're seeing the delay and why we have, from an island health perspective, we've not been comfortable with the production of edibles at this point in time. And certainly our dispensaries are quite aware of our policy on this one. I do think it's going to pose a lot more challenges in terms of regulating, monitoring. There may be regulations that come down in terms of, well, you can't make it look like a gummy bear. Okay, we may see something like that, but we may not. Okay, we actually do not know what we're going to be seeing going forward, because at this point in time, the federal government hasn't actually given an indication what this might look like. And it does become a concern to healthcare professionals because of the very issues that you've identified.
So I guess what's important from our perspective as a school district is that we acknowledge that that still is an illegal substance, and we need to educate our kids in the schools how the difference as we move through this and the dangers that are involved with those products until they become more regulatory. And I think that's our challenge in the district, is to get that message out. So,
yeah, and I'm going to add to that challenge. I think when you compare it with alcohol, alcohol cannot be easily brought into the school setting. Some of these newer delivery devices can be. And I think fundamentally that's where you're going to find the major challenge.
Trustee Higginson.
Thanks for your presentation. It's always so informative. Lots of information every year. This is to you, and also maybe some information from our staff, that a few months ago, in an attempt to be proactive, we wrote a letter to all of our towns and regional districts requesting that we be part of any committees that they start to form on how to, it's not legalized, but they have to enforce. And I haven't heard anything from our staff, and you may know whether our communities are local communities. I've seen some indications in the newspaper that, like, the Regional District of Nanaimo and the City of Nanaimo have started committees. I'm just wondering what they're doing, if you know what they're doing. I don't want to put you on the spot for answering for them, but is there a, in our area, are our local community, are they starting to think about how they're going to enforce it, and where the locations of these places are going to be, and all that kind of stuff?
Thank you, and through the chair, I actually think I got that in there and I skipped over it, and it's such a critical point. City of Nanaimo has established a task group. I am sitting with that task group at this point in time. The issue of setbacks from various different settings has come up, as it has in many other communities. The biggest concern about the setbacks, or the proximity of dispensaries to an educational setting, is the message that it gives. And there's conversation at this point in time about what would a setback look like. I might encourage you to actually proactively reach out and sort of say, what is a reasonable setback? I know many of the other larger urban settings have been talking about 300 meters from an educational facility. Okay, I'm just going to put that out there, 300 to 500. I know there are some people sitting around the table with the city that think 100 meters is sufficient. So I do think if you've got an opinion, it's worth expressing. You can still do that right now. That committee will continue to meet for about another 4 to 6 weeks maximum.
Committees? So, we sent out the letter requesting membership on these committees. I just wondered if we had.
I don't believe we are.
Or not. Okay, thank you.
Trustee Routley.
I've had the pleasure, I guess, of working in mental health and addictions and for many years, and I've seen marijuana actually causing like catastrophic damage in people's lives, people's personal lives, and in families, and quite shocking actually. Like it's funny how it's a bigger concern, especially the research with children around the developing brain and marijuana use. Has your team or anybody part of VHA put together an educational package or educational system for teaching kids about the inherent risks with the developing brain as opposed to the older individual?
Thanks, and I'm not the expert on the curriculum, and I always look to Bob on those. But okay, in terms of the provincial resources is the iMinds component, which actually does get into some of this, and I think that when we're doing the workshops, that's part of the issue that has been coming up. I don't think we've actually gone out with any particular resource to the schools, because I think that we'd like to see a commitment that there is a willingness to have an open conversation and bring this messaging forward. I think that better that let's have that broad conversation about what those impacts actually are and what do you want to share in the schools, because there's a group out there that are actively promoting this product as well.
So I guess a follow-up would be then, what do we presently, like what's the protocol for the school district to get that information from Dr. Hasselbeck to give to our students, or to actually add to the curriculum?
To add to the curriculum?
Or just around drug use, around...
Well, I think there's
around the
a fair
knowledge.
amount of discussions already occurring in the schools for our programs. Mr. Essinger may be better equipped for that.
Through the chair. I'm actually pleased to announce that we've been accepted as part of a UVic Cannabis Dialogues project, in which with it comes some funding that we will bring teachers together and form focus groups in how we can deliver this curriculum directly to children. That's one part. The other part is we've been promoting the iMinds curriculum that Dr. Hasselbeck talks about all year, and I will continue to do so.
Trustee Solomon.
Thank you, President. So in the committee, is there support for mirroring the presence of the selling of products, mirroring the policies, as like to the alcohol, as the proximity to schools and this kind of situation?
Through the chair, I'm sitting with the task group at this point in time. The task group has not made any decisions.
Mm-hmm.
It's in that information collection phase. That's why I'm sharing with you the diversity of what we know from other settings. I believe we will get to discussions on policy, which is why if you are interested in having a setback or a distance from the school, express that opinion now. I'm not aware of other communities on the island that at this time have actually come up with explicit decisions other than Tofino. And Tofino is zoned a very specific area where they will allow retail, which is has inherently put in the setback from the education facilities. So I think there are ways to do this, but I actually think it's something that needs to be pushed out.
No other questions. Thank you very much for your presentation, and I'm sure the board is all pleased but not surprised that Assistant Superintendent Eslinger is already on the job and has been for a year. Thanks very much, Dr. Hasselbeck.
Chairman and members. Thank you.
And up next, District Principal John Cunnion, and International Student Education.
So just as John's setting up there, to set a little bit of the scene, we approached John to bring information forward to the board around international education and an update for you. But also there will be a lens in it also of some of the things and shifts and changes that are happening there around capacities and how we're adjusting out there in the system around particularly our secondary schools and capacities and et cetera. So thanks for coming and doing this, John.
Thank you for having me, and good evening, happy June. I've got 10 whole minutes to explain a really complicated program, and I'll do the best that I can, but my commitment is...
Maybe 12.
Well, Dale started my timer early, so maybe less than 10. If you do have questions or want to have some follow-up discussion, please don't hesitate to. I'd be more than happy to help. So I'll start today by talking a little bit, giving you a few quick facts about the program. The International Student Education Program started back in 1998. It was quite small at the time and has grown out every year since. We are a K-12 program in the district. The majority of our students are in the secondary system, but a small number are in our elementary system as well. Our International Student Education Office is based out of Dover Bay. I have 5 full-time staff, 1 part-time staff, and 5 program advisors located in each of the secondary schools. We run a homestay program through the district, and I could go on at length about some of the challenges around the previous presentation and how that applies to a homestay program, but I'll save that one for another day. But this is actually seen as a very desirable part of our program, that we as a district run our own homestay rather than contracting out to a third party. In British Columbia, there are over 20,000 international students hosted in the province that year. The international side of education is monitored by the Ministry of Education. We have an association, a national association of international school administrators that I belong to, also a provincial association of international administrators as well. Locally, there was a program review done on international student education in 2015 by Mike McKay, and I'll reference that a little bit along the way here. And probably the best part or place to start with this discussion is looking at AP 235, which, if you have too much time on your hands, is an admin policy that pertains directly to international students. Is well worth the read as to some of the rules around our program and purpose. I'll touch on it a little bit here and explain that what the purpose of the program is, and this comes directly from AP 235. 3 main points to this, and I see this as a prioritized list of our purpose. The first one being increasing the intercultural and international understanding. This is both for Canadian students and our international students. It is a good thing for both. Generating supplementary revenues and increasing enrollment. So those are the 3 points. Looking over the last few years, our enrollment has steadily increased. The figures I'm quoting for 2018-2019, it does show a decrease in our enrollment. There's an asterisk beside that because we will continue to take applications for second semester students probably into the fall. Some of our students come for full year, some come for first semester, some come for second semester. We are more or less full for September 2018, however we are still taking applications for January 2019. We are also now taking applications for September 2019 and have had a few inquiries about January 2020 already. So we're always a few years ahead of sort of real time. Looking at the SOFI reports, the tuition that is generated through the International Student Education Program continues to increase. Last year came out over $4.5 million worth of revenue to the district. And that revenue translates into a variety of different things within the district. One is in staffing, both for international student education staff, but also school-based staff. That results in supplies and services within the district. There are direct contributions that we make to schools to be able to support these students, but also to support the schools themselves. And there's also unallocated revenue to support district spending priorities that is available. So the funds get used in a variety of different ways. Our current priorities in the program, first one being, and I'll touch on each of these individually as I go on here. We want to meet the enrollment targets as best we can for 2018-2019, although we are responding to some of the enrollment pressures in the district. And then setting new targets for 2019-2020. We are in the midst of an ongoing process of diversifying our international student education population by country and by the countries represented in each schools. Right now we have over 21 countries represented in our schools at this time. We want to ensure that that diversity is seen across all of the sites rather than certain countries represented more on some sites than others. Continuing to promote the program in a variety of international markets is a priority. Updating our policies and procedures to mitigate risk. Risk is something that's on my mind all the time. And also promoting the program. We are aligning the ISC program with district goals and values, and we're looking at both short and long-term strategic planning. So our enrollment targets, I made this presentation last week, so some of these numbers are already out of date. That's how quickly some of these things will change. Dover Bay is effectively full. It's at 98 of 100 students, and I'm in a daily conversation with the administration around what their timetable and what their scheduling is looking like. 98 is a number that they're fairly comfortable with right now. We had one cancellation yesterday, but one new applicant today who took that spot. Wellington is at about 76 of 80 seats. NDSS is a school that we were paying particular attention to because having worked there, I know it's a complex site and we were feeling pressure of increased enrollment. So as soon as we realized that there was a limitation of space and that they were feeling quite full, we capped off our enrollment at 40 to 45, and we won't try to enroll anymore. Barsby is sitting at about 38 of 40. And there is some potential for more. They're taking some time and looking at their schedules right now. Ladysmith was over, but we had 2 cancellations and then 1 new applicant, so we're actually at 20 and we're full. Cedar was at 2 students, went down to 1, and then this morning went back up to 2 again. So we had a student who applied for second semester from Northern Germany who's really excited about going to Cedar. And we have a student from Spain who just applied this morning and will be a full-year student there. Our 2019-2020 targets are not established yet. It is an extremely complex discussion that involves the school-based administrators and really what their feeling is about what their capacity is in their buildings. And so that discussion is ongoing throughout the year. And as schools fill up, especially right now, I'm quite mindful of whether or not schools can actually fill to the targets that we're looking for. If they don't and they can't accommodate those students, then we settle for that. Diversifying, there's a couple of graphs that are hard to read, but this shows the diversity by country and by the number of students from each country between last year and so far this year. And so our enrollment from some countries has gone up while from others has gone down. Canada wasn't on there. Also, within the school, we're trying to diversify our population more as well. So comparing last year Dover Bay to this year Dover Bay, again, some countries are less represented in this coming year than they were this past year. Again, with the idea that we want to have more countries represented at each of our sites. So this is something that we're actively managing. This is an important focus of ours. One of the other priorities that we had was promoting the International Student Education Program internationally. These are the countries that we promoted directly in this year. So Germany, Thailand, Vietnam, Mexico, Turkey, Japan, Czech Republic, Ukraine, Italy, Spain, and Brazil. We did a bit of traveling this year. Some updates that have been made. We continue to update our homestay family handbook. There are some tentative updates or some pending updates to AP 235. Dr. Eismicher and I met earlier in the year. We made a few notes of things that need to probably be updated, but that would have to come before the board before anything can be approved through that. We've updated our agent agreements and as well our student agreements. The other priority was to update our promotional materials. I really want to thank Dale Burgos, and Tiffany Skibinski has been excellent with helping us as a graphic designer to produce some really high quality print materials. She's helped us with our website, and our presentation that we do to agents has been updated as well, and looks very, very clean and polished. Our ongoing, and this is actually our new marketing material that Tiffany designed. In the picture here, we are consistently trying to align ourselves and our program with the values and goals of the district. So keeping these goals in mind as we make changes to the program. Short and long-term planning is a bit of a complex process. It would be hard to come up with a long-term strategic plan at this point because it feels like the sands are shifting very, very rapidly. And so right now, I started in the role in this year, and my goal was really to kind of keep things status quo as much as possible and react to some of the new changes in the system. Some of the challenges that we're facing, the SEC implications, although very good things in terms of limiting class size and the composition, does make timetabling quite a bit more difficult, so it is hard for us. Especially students who are enrolling and need specific courses, it is hard for us to guarantee that they will receive those courses. So for example, our Spanish students take courses in our system, and they take the report cards back to Spain, and they are able to get credit for the education that they received here, but they have to receive certain courses there. So with the increasing pressures on timetables, it is harder to guarantee some of those courses. Increasing enrollment in the district. Our enrollment has gone up significantly. So, for example, we only took, I think, 6 elementary students, new elementary international students for next year, because our elementary population has grown so much. So we're kind of reacting to those increases in enrollment for that reason. Homestay availability there aren't as many homestays out there as we would like, and it's also very competitive. There are some private homestay companies. VIU has a homestay company. The private schools have homestays. We are sort of competing with some of those other homestay options within the school district, so trying to stay competitive with that is complex. International education is a competitive market. We are competing with some of our neighboring districts, so we're constantly keeping that in mind. Risk management is something that keeps me awake at night. As the legal custodian of almost all the students who come into the district, this is something that is first and foremost on my mind. But there's also some opportunities, and one of them really is growth in the South End schools. So Cedar Secondary is a school I've spent a lot of time promoting this year to try to rebuild the international presence in that building. But just generally, the South End schools are a focus of our program right now, knowing that the North End schools are quite full. And really, we want to have our agent partners promoting all of Nanaimo, not just one area of Nanaimo. Short programs, I get a phone call every 2 weeks asking me, begging me, imploring that I start short programs over the summer, over spring break, over Christmas, in February. I could start saying yes, but so far I'm not, but that is an area where we could potentially grow. And also looking at the outbound focus, so creating opportunities for Nanaimo students to travel abroad now that, or because the travel limitation on our students is being lifted this summer. I can see that there would be an opportunity to focus on that a bit more. My 10 minutes are up. I raced as fast as I could, but I'd be happy to entertain some questions if there are any.
Trustee Ray.
John, thanks for your presentation.
Welcome.
I do have a question about how do we come up with the formula, what we charge these students? Obviously, it's a revenue for us. It's another way for us to bring more funds into the district. So how do we decide what we charge for students out of catch or international students, sorry, to come to our district?
I don't know that formula describes it very well. What I'm really looking at is to remain competitive with the neighboring districts, because when students are shopping around, tuition and the overall cost is something that they do pay very, very close attention to. So we do need to make sure that we are competitive with neighboring districts. But also, I think we're good value for the money that we are charging. We are a very desirable area for international students. So it's something that we are reviewing over time. And what also gets built into that are things like increases in our homestay payments, for example, because cost of living keeps going up. Plus, we want to remain competitive with the other homestay options in the city. So, you know, as homestay fees go up, our overall cost goes up. So we can also try to bump tuition up, but we can't send that tuition shock through the system where suddenly we jump up a huge amount, because we would start losing some of our consistent markets.
Just a follow up.
Sure.
If you could give me, I don't need specific details, but what percentage more versus what we get from the government for our students are?
Versus the basic funding?
Yeah,
I
basic
don't know
funding.
off the top of my head. I can tell you, because we're factoring in our homestay, our third-party medical is part of the cost. There's an application fee, so it's not just the straight tuition. It's a few extra costs in there.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Trustee President?
Thank you. You mentioned opportunities for growth.
Yeah.
And I'm really intrigued by this concept of short programs. What would that look like? If we ever-
So what it could look like is a 2-week program for students to come to the district during the summer. And that's one of the more consistent ones I get asked about. So some of our local agencies are able to get a group of 20 students from China or Japan and are looking for us to use our homestay pool and use some of our facilities and put on an educational program for these students. It's one more thing to take on.
Okay.
But it is an opportunity. There was another one as well that I was trying to get arranged for this year. One of our agencies wanted to have visiting teachers come into the district in February over the Chinese New Year break, and come in and watch Canadian teachers. And ultimately we couldn't get the logistics together for that. But Cedar was the school that we were looking at having those teachers come in and observe. And it's something that's kind of on my radar for next year to try again.
Okay.
But we could do those all year long. And honestly, it's every 2 weeks I get a phone call asking for one.
Follow up with you over. Are these sorts of things happening in other districts?
They are. Yeah, they are.
Yeah.
Good question.
Trustee Kindler?
Yeah, I'm curious about the application process and sort of the lead time that's required, because I'm assuming it's a commitment on both parties.
It is.
Do you find homestay before you make a commitment? And well, how nimble are you? What sort of lead time is?
Yeah, it's a very it's a puzzle, especially right now as we're kind of at capacity. I'm not only at capacity for school placements, but also for homestays. So I'm in a situation where at a Barsby, I might be able to take a grade 11, but it has to be a boy because I only have homestays for boys at this point, and I have to find the right applicant that checks all those boxes. So there are some countries that also apply much earlier than others. The application I talked about for 2020 is from Germany, and they plan these things out well in advance, and they want to be able to secure a seat. Whereas in Spain, it's a lot more difficult. So the most recent applications I got were from Spain. So that is a bit of the challenge with trying to diversify, is that you almost have to move away from the safety of some of those consistent markets that fill early and say, I want to hold on to a handful of spots for this country, this country, hoping that those ultimately come through for us. So it is a game.
Trustee Solomon?
Do you have to have a homestay parent per student?
Not all of our students stay in our homestay program.
Okay.
That's a good question. So some will live with a relative, and so they take the legal custodianship, and the student will live with those parents. We keep a record of who those students are, where they're living. But for any of the students who are part of our homestay program, I'm the legal custodian of them when they enter into the country, so I take responsibility for those kids.
So there would never be a situation, let's say a grade 11 or 12 student and a couple of them living together, perhaps, or rented?
No.
No, they have to do something.
No. And that's all about risk mitigation right there. Yeah.
Just one from me, following up from Trustee Ray. I too would very much like to get that dollar number per student for a local student as opposed to an international student?
Sure.
Could you give us a high-level number, not
Certainly.
down to the penny?
Yeah, I can do that for you.
Much appreciated.
No
Thanks
problem.
very much. Were questions over here? Did I miss anyone?
Thanks, John.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Mr. Cunningham. Assistant Superintendent Gray. Speak to us about academies.
Before I begin, I just want to share that I was at Tech Week at Wellington today, and every lunch hour this week, they're doing something around technology. So I shared with Wellington that I would wear the badge of honor today and promote it while I was here. So, good evening.
Check.
Thank you. Yes. Thank you for having me. I'm here too. Discussed academies overall. This is an information presentation, and really it's a short overview of our district academies. So I'd like to start by letting everyone know that we have 8 academies across our school district. One at Departure Bay, it is our eco school. We also have 7 more at 3 different secondary schools. The Jazz Academy at Wellington. We have the Performing Arts and Baseball Academy at Dover Bay. We also have the NLPS Soccer, Central Island Lacrosse, Vancouver Island Beach Volleyball, and Hockey Canada Skills at Nanaimo District Secondary School. The Departure Bay Eco School, that started a couple of years ago. It's a focus on the environment. It is, in-catchment enrollment is growing, and these students are naturally taking the spaces within Departure Bay at this point in time. School is at capacity, and there's really no room for expansion on that particular site. So this presentation really is to share some of the challenges that we're facing around the academies currently, around our facilities and our space. The Wellington Jazz Academy, we have all registered students come from the in-catchment of the Wellington area. It's a senior program. Grade 11s and 12s go into that academy. There's one block, it's outside of the timetable, and a block means a class in terms of that. There's no audition or tryouts, but students may receive recommendation from maybe their band teachers in their junior years. There is no fee for the program. The Performing Arts Academy at Dover Bay. Now that's been a long time in existence. It includes out-of-catchment registrants. It is grade 8 to 12. It's a grade 8 to 12 program. It's audition-based, and those auditions occur in the spring. There's 2 blocks of the Performing Arts, and it's inside the timetable. And usually it's focused on junior and a senior program. And there's no fee for this program. The Baseball Academy at Dover Bay, it started in 2016. It includes out-of-catchment students, out-of-district students. It's a developmental program. There's no tryouts involved. It's one block. It's inside the timetable. The fee structure is $700, and the focus of those monies go to the guest coaches, field rentals, and indoor equipment. The Soccer Academy at NDSS. The majority of students are in catchment. It's a skill and developmental program. There's 2 blocks inside the timetable. There's no tryouts. The fee structure is around $400. The majority of those monies go to guest coaches, trainers, equipment, and apparel. The Central Island Lacrosse at ND. The majority of registrants are out of catchment. It's a skill-based and exposure-based program. There's 4 blocks, 2 junior and 2 senior, inside the timetable. There's no tryouts. This is definitely a team that plays in tournaments and BC High School Provincials under the NDSS banner. The fee structure is a new student would be $1,000, a returning student would be $800, A female student would be $600 per year, and the majority of those expenses go on equipment, apparel, transportation, and instructors. Vancouver Island Beach Volleyball. Majority of registrants are in catchment. It's a technical and tactical skill development. There's 2 blocks, junior and senior. It's inside the timetable. There's no tryouts. It's $800. The majority of those monies go on transportation, instructors, facility rentals, and apparel. Hockey Canada Skills at NDSS. It includes in and out of catchment and district registrants. The program is individual skill development. There's 2 blocks, junior and senior, inside the timetable. There are no tryouts. The fee structure is $800. Facility, coaches, equipment, and apparel. There's a note down here. I put down that Silvertips is not part of the academy, but it is a BC midget hockey team, which is sponsored by Vancouver One Block. So I just wanted to be very clear on the Silvertips, because I think there's some question marks out there around what the Silvertips would be and how they're affiliated with ND. So the real challenge here is how do we address the circumstance around our facilities and our academies. And so we started that process. And so the phase 1, we wanted to really review all of our district programs with academy status. And currently right now we're speaking with the teachers. We've talked to some parts of our community members around their understanding of the academies. We certainly want to look at a phase 2. How can we identify solutions to relieve immediate facility issues? And I see some of those things being able to be done through the out of catchment process that really we start around June 15th. So we'll look at some immediate places that we can identify some areas that we can reduce the pressure. And then phase 3 and phase 4, I really see this as something that we will embark on next year. What kind of guidelines and criteria can we create for the future growth and expansion? And then also, what can we do to develop a long-term plan to ensure sustainability of all of these programs? So it's a bit of an overview, very short, very brief, but it gives you a really good look at what's happening with academies across the district. And are there any questions?
Trustee Kindler.
Yeah, I don't think you covered it, but for the Echo School, what are the costs for the Echo School?
No cost.
No cost?
At all.
And the other question I would have is there a program in place at any of the academies that charge for students who have an inability to pay?
Absolutely. I think that with every academy there is always a principal, a fund, some sort of way that students can actually access those programs.
Thank you.
Thank you. Looking at across academy specifically, with the fee structure, can you remind me why is there a difference between the males and females in the cost? The 800. It says new 1,000, returning 800, female 600.
You know, I'm going to rely on my colleague in the back there because I don't have that detail. That'd be great if Deputy Superintendent would be allowed to answer that question. Sure. If I could call upon you.
Thank you. Through the chair, the rationale for the difference, specifically for your question, has to do with travel. So some of those costs are associated with travel. Some of the tournaments that Indy enters into are male athletes tournaments. And there's also a discrepancy between new students and returning students in that some of the equipment charges for initial layout aren't incurred in subsequent years.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Thank you for your presentation. On the facility capacity challenges, phase 1, 2, 3, 4, I'm trying to figure this out for the public who might be trying to understand. Can you please explain what you mean by identify solutions to relieve immediate facility issues?
Well,
You
I
can say
think
we're not
that
there yet. If you
in the
don't.
past, we've accepted students for academies on probably March 31st and thereafter. But I think right now what we need to really look at would be the outer catchment process of June 15th. And so as we look toward how do we meet our community needs overall as of June 15th, how many students do we have on our list who have applied for out of catchment? How many students do we have on the list who are pending registrants, who are maybe coming from out of town? We will have an overall look from central registration on how many students do we have pending. And then we don't get ourselves in a circumstance where we can't accept some of those children who maybe move across the street from our schools. And so if we use the June 15th process, it will certainly help us determine through the principal's office which students, what seats are available at grade 8, grade 9, grade 10, 11, 12, whether they're gender specific and or not. So I think that process will help us to really identify at that point in time what seats we have available in some of those schools who may have those pressures. And we will do that work very soon.
Yeah, and on top of that, during the process, there's also all the applications are time stamped, dated stamped, so that we have a priority list from the ones that applied first, working its way down. So out of catchment process is quite clear.
It is, and
Yeah.
just to add, siblings are given preference. So we have definitely a process that's put in place that we go through that very systematically, and that's a process we have to go through after June 15th of this year. So we can go through that process to alleviate some of those immediate circumstances.
I'm particularly pleased to see Phase 4 develop a long-term plan to ensure the sustainability of the programs, because I know that that's been quite a concern for some of the people. Specifically, I've been reading it in relation to the Lacrosse Academy, but for some of the other academies as well. So I'm glad to hear that we are committed to working on the sustainability of the academies for the people who are asking for them.
Justin.
Thank you. I'm always quite interested in the equitable nature of public education and equal access for all. It's nice that we have the ability for parents to access funding for their children to go into these programs, but do they? Because it's a different step. One dropping off a check and another going through a process of basically, can you please pay for this for me? Puts a parent in a different kind of situation. So I'm curious to know if we have numbers on who is accessing these to alleviate the fee structure. And the second one is, where do we notice the students coming from? Are we meeting all of our students' needs by saying, we have kids from the Bayview area and the Cedar area and North End areas. Do we have an equal or somewhat equitable representation for student population? I don't know that you can answer that one. I'm just always quite curious about that.
I couldn't answer that specifically right now, but we do have that detailed information where students are coming from. I think it's an easy answer to determine from a school-based leader who is accessing it, how are they doing that. But you know, I can assure you that it is being supported, but I understand your questions.
How is it decided which schools host academies? I'm new to the district, and I find it interesting that NDS has 4 academies. And so how are those decisions made, would be my question.
Well, they've all developed over time. And so with regard to some of our academies like soccer and hockey, they were started in the early 2000s. And so part of it would have been an interest and a passion from maybe a staff member, maybe a teacher, maybe community members. So it's really, or I would say, built organically at the school site in terms of a staff member, maybe a community who has real interest in it. But I think over time, as we've had to determine where academies go, as we've looked at some of our facilities, we've made some adjustments and some changes. We had to determine where they would go at that particular time. So a couple of years ago, we had to move some academies to NDSS. And so that's where many of them are housed, 4 out of the 6 that you can see at the secondary level, or the 7. And so over time, I think that it's really timely right now that we do that review. We look at how they're organized, And then in the future, how do we want to address some of the facility needs, and how can we go through that process that honors input and our community and our parent voice, as well as our teacher voice and our students.
Thank you very much, Ms. Gray. Thank you.
Thank you very much for having me.
And Assistant Superintendent Estlinger. Alternative delivery of sensitive materials.
Good evening, and thanks for having us. It's my absolute pleasure to introduce you to Natalie Chelsom, who is our resident expert on sexual health education and the curriculum involved within that. Tonight we're going to showcase some of Natalie's fine work in putting together an administrative procedure for both schools and parents to guide through the process of alternative delivery of sensitive materials. If I could draw your attention to page 51 in your handout. This administrative procedure pertains specifically to the curriculum contained within physical health education and career life education, the CLE curriculum. And Natalie's going to fill you in on what is comprised within that. This admin procedure only applies to the direct instruction of reproduction and sexuality. And I want to recognize that our school district believes that sees the family as the primary educator in the development of a child's attitudes, standards, and values. And it's the intent of this admin procedure to ensure that individual and family values and standards and diversities are respected. So Natalie's going to walk you through how she put these things together. Again, I'm very impressed with Natalie's work, and I'm sure you will be too. And I'm just going to fade to the back here in case Natalie wants to call upon me for any parts of this.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'll just give you a little bit of a background before we go into the procedure. So sexual health, I like to call it personal health, body science. Sexual health encompasses empowering young people to assert their boundaries, teaching young people about personal safety skills and sexual abuse prevention. And as kids get older, we teach them the skills to be digital citizens, how to responsibly use technology, and how to have healthier relationships, to build their self-esteem, and eventually how to be safe sexual decision makers. We want to prevent unplanned pregnancies, prevent sexually transmitted infections, and prevent sexual violence and exploitation. So sexual health is found in the curriculum from kindergarten to grade 10, and my role started 2 years ago to support teachers and to support students to make sure that all students are receiving quality sexual health education. It was a 3-day-a-week job, but we've recently increased that to next year a 1.0 full-time job to support over 30, is it 35, 36 schools do we have? 37? Lots, a lot of the schools. So I was looking at what are the barriers to quality sexual health in our district. Number one was making sure that we have an equitable program that's culturally sensitive, and each school would have a predictable program that all students would receive. So this year we introduced a program called Kids in the Know, which we hope teachers would deliver as a foundation personal safety lessons. Another barrier was to build capacity for teachers, because teachers are not trained to teach sexual health in university. So how do we build their comfort and capacity? And the third barrier was increasing transparency, because we know that parents are generally supportive of comprehensive sexual health, but often they don't know what is being taught, or they're not sure when it's happening, and we want to help them continue the conversations at home. So I thought one goal to bridge the transparency gap was to build a website that would be accessible to everybody, especially parents and educators. That was my main goal to start with. So I'll walk you through that. It's just on the school district website under programs. And you can see it's under PHE because personal or sexual health is found in PE class or gym class, and they've changed the name from PE to physical health education. Let's wait for that to load here. And what's really cool about this website is we have a button up here that translates the site to other languages. So for example, our new Canadians who may speak Arabic, for example, can access this information easily. So the two areas that I populated would be the section for educators, and I've broken it into the kindergarten grade 7 and then for secondary teachers. So I'll just give you a little walkthrough of the kindergarten grade 7, and you can just see some of the topics that are at the fingertips of educators now. So it's important to give educators reliable sources of information and not expect them to go to Google and search for health information themselves. So if I open that up, you can see these are all reliable lesson plans about sexually transmitted infections, sexual diversity, there's printable puberty guides, body safety posters, all at their fingertips. There's also developmental stages by age, so what kids should be able to do or understand at what age and what supervision guidelines are recommended at different ages. And there's also links right to our reporting abuse and neglect, information about SOGI. Sometimes people are curious, what does SOGI mean? How does it affect our students? And then links to problem sexual behavior. I often get emails like, is it normal if my student is doing this? And we can look at the age they are and look at whether the behavior is normal or not. So I'm going to show you one more link before we get into the procedure here. I also populated this Need Help Now resource, so you can see some of the sentence starters there. This is accessible to parents and young people. I need help reporting bullying or harassment, or somebody's sharing a private picture of me. We know that happens a lot to young people, they get exploited. So give young people or anybody a background about what their rights are, and it links them directly to resources, for example, the Need Help Now website, which will connect them with the tools to take back their power so they don't become exploited. So I'm going to take us down to the parent section, and there's more resources here, but at the middle here, I wanted to show you the alternative delivery sexual health. So in 2016, the provincial, or the Ministry of Education created an alternative delivery policy, which says that parents can deliver the education around reproduction and sexuality outside of the classroom, maybe at home or maybe through their church, but they're not allowed to, the students are not allowed to opt out of learning about these important learning outcomes. So we wanted to make it easy for parents and easy for administrators to follow a standard guide to how parents could do alternative delivery. So I'll invite you up here now. I'm going to link you to what it will look like. It's in draft procedure or draft form right now. And I think they have a copy of this.
So after tonight, or I should say tomorrow morning, this admin procedure will go live, and all the links that you see here, you can just click on and it will take you there. Again, the purpose of this is so that parents can have a conversation with the principal or the classroom teacher, and in that conversation decide that they're going to teach certain aspects of this content themselves at home. And so what the ministry charges us with is we need to ensure that that is actually the case, and that we require parents to report back to us that they actually have done that. So Natalie and I put our heads together and came up with, we didn't want this to be an obstacle because we realized that some parents will want to do this. So we created a form, which we will show you.
So it's Appendix D.
So this form, again, is a conversation, and we provided all the language in the curriculum, which Natalie will quickly show you. But this package tonight, as you see in your handout, is quite elaborate, and we can't do it justice in 10 minutes. But the content in the curriculum that is outlined here actually are the words that a parent would choose to write into this form. And then at the bottom, so then there's a date covered, and then there's a tick box and a place for a parent's signature. This will then go in the student's file as evidence that the parent has taught this curriculum at home. And then we're off the hook. We don't need to ask any more questions. There are no presentations, no tests, but we have the document that shows that this was covered at home. Also, you'll notice a bullet there at the bottom. It's an example, and that bullet is a report card comment that teachers would use to indicate on the report card that this content was covered by the parent at home. So I'm going to ask Natalie now to open Appendix C and explain to you how we have organized the curriculum so that it's clear and transparent, so parents can see what is directly taught in these two areas at each grade level.
Okay, this is accessible to parents today on the website and to teachers. So we hope that all teachers are using this as a guide for what they're going to teach, and all parents can know what their children are going to be learning at school. So on page 1, I just mentioned a few answers to common questions, like why do boys and girls sit in the same class during sexual health? Or how much time should be allotted in each grade to sexual health? And why do we teach sexual health? And then I've broken down the curriculum, this would be kindergarten and grade 1, into what teachers should be addressing, and I've given examples based on best practices, based on options for sexual health. He's a guiding educator around these programs. So it's broken down grade by grade, so parents can know exactly what is being taught. The good thing is the program Kids in the Know is not about sexuality and reproduction. Kids in the Know is about personal safety. So we're hoping that even if parents do decide to do alternative delivery for a little bit here or there, that their child can still partake in the lessons about healthy relationships, boundaries, and sexual abuse prevention. I won't go through it all, but it's a 12-page document if anybody would like more information about that.
It's very comprehensive, and I encourage parents and trustees to have a look. And you know, I know there are lots of questions, and we don't have time tonight, but Natalie and I are more than willing to entertain any of those questions. What we would like to do is develop a FAQ so that we could address those frequently asked questions. And Natalie started doing that at this point on her website. Natalie created this also, and we will continue to add to that so parents have a go-to place for their questions. And I think we will start there.
Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. Very informative as always. So on this webpage, is there a link to it on our main webpage that will drive us right so it's easy for parents to find and okay.
Yeah, it's just under programs.
Okay.
So right here.
So this is our public site.
Okay. Thank you.
Go to programs and down to PHE.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thanks.
Trustee Higginson.
Thanks. Thank you. So informative and really helpful right now. Lots of questions and stuff. So this information is really helpful to us as trustees as we are out in the public. My question was around the process to develop the procedure, and just wondering if other partners were talked to, because I think that's what we do at the board level. We have a requirement for some kind of consultation. It's an excellent procedure. I'm in full support of it. I just wondered, who else we talk to in order to make sure that everybody's voices are heard.
Some of the partners we worked with were the administrators, so we're going to present to all the administrators and get their feedback because they work directly with the parents answering their questions. We also consulted with other sexual health providers that sometimes schools contract out and got their input, and then the social justice advocates to make sure that this is inclusive and represents all families and so on. Mm-hmm.
And because it's an administrative procedure, if we're working through this and we discover something glaring that we absolutely forgot or didn't write in a clear way, we can just go in and change that really quickly to make it clear. And that's the beauty of this being an admin procedure. So we're always open to the public, to our educators, our teachers, our staff, to let us know any feedback. We accept that. Natalie has her an email address on here to get feedback and to ask questions?
Just up here at the top. You can email me directly through there.
Trustee Kindler.
Yeah, thank you, and welcome. And,
thank you.
Enjoyed hearing the presentation and understand these are sort of the building blocks for building capacity within our district. And I'm wondering if you have already or have plans to then hold professional development with the teachers, and where we are with that.
Yes, so I'm always offer professional development. There's also Brain Camp, I believe, in the summer offered to teachers. There's Meet and Eat. What's the third one? There's another one that we have after hours. And I provide PLC, so professional learning community time. So I go to schools and work with staff. I do present anytime. I go whenever they invite me in. So I plan next year on really focusing on capacity building now that this is established. Yes.
Sure. Great. Thank you.
And Victoria School District has just asked us for a copy.
Get the checkbook
The word
out.
is out.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Our pleasure.
Thank you.
Great presentation. District Principal Tenning and Trustee Higginson will be talking to us about reconciliation.
I've got a. Okay. Okay. The scale, everyone. Which is good day. I could not find what good evening is. I'm happy to learn the word for it, but I'll start with Usquel. Further to the update that was provided last month, the Reconciliation Advisory Committee has met on May 7th and on May 28th. Along with those two meetings of the larger committee, there's been two smaller meetings of a sub-working group to debrief each large meeting and then collaboratively plan together for the next meeting. On May 7th, the committee met at Stillup Kinhut. This location is the birthplace of the Snuneymuxw on their traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory. Stillup, or deep water, was the ancestors' summer place where they caught codfish in the deep water. The committee acknowledges, during this particular meeting, the committee acknowledged the importance of the land and the messages of the land being at the center of our work. We acknowledge that there is a healing that we have had and we are experiencing together through this work, through this path that we are traveling together, and we have become interconnected. We feel like we have become a family. We feel like our origin story is one that could be a lesson, that could be modeled. We are strangers from all walks of life that have come together to become a family. This is very emotional work, so I'm just putting it all out there. We spent time at this meeting discussing the need for collective action. In the beginning, at Stillup, the terrain was harsh, and one needed to come together, to work together in order to survive. Today, the terrain is still harsh, although the circumstances are different. But we need to come together in order to survive. Creating a sense of belonging, the land is telling us that we all belong here. Our common interest that we have discovered through this process is that we all live on this land together. That is our commonality. We need to listen to the messages that the land is telling us. Questions around how to get the sense of belonging, creating a sense of belonging, the land is telling us that we all belong here. We ask questions around how to get that sense of belonging that the land is asking for into our schools. We need to allow the teachings of the land and the words of the old people to inform us. There is protocol in the land. Acknowledgement that part of reconciliation is bringing back what has been lost. Protocol allows our spirits to be strong and allows us to be ready to do the work we have to do. A ceremony of belonging, creating the collective or sense of community and belonging, and creating the sense of belonging at school. We all belong. We all belong here. using Esqualoan, good hearts and good minds, and Nut, which I may not be saying right, working together to guide our work and our actions. We left this meeting with 3 pillars or foundations to work towards: preparation, protocol, and ceremony. The committee felt at the end of that meeting that all of that would lead to a sense of belonging that the land is urging us to create. On May 28th, the committee met at the Bethlehem Center at Taytuckton, which is Mount Benson. This is another sacred birthplace. It is the home of the Thunderbird. The Thunderbird appears to tell us, to let us know when we need to correct behavior. The committee reviewed the work of our last meeting and discussed the fact that it's been very difficult to communicate the work we're doing, as I bawl. Relationality was discussed, treating each other like family at the base of all interactions and interconnectedness. We are all living on this land. We are all connected by this land. This land has a story to tell. We are creating a strong base of how to be together and how to belong. We keep returning to the 3 pillars of preparation, protocol, and ceremony, and we added relationality during the last meeting. So we now have 4 pillars, and I'm not sure that we'll end up using the word pillar, but that is a word that's being used right now. Preparation, we must prepare ourselves to teach and or learn. We must prepare ourselves before going into a school site. We must create the importance of the school site as a center of belonging. Protocols, understanding what was lost and bringing it back. Creating a strong spirit, one that is ready to learn. A ceremony, a sense of belonging. We are all family, we all belong. Ceremony allows us to leave the negative outside the door. There's an old story about leaving the nail on the door, leaving everything on the nail outside the door before you enter into a room. Relationality, we are all one family. We are all related through where we live and our relationship to the land we live on. We create the sense of belonging, asking ourselves to ensure that every being, every child, every teacher, every family knows you belong here. Using Esqualoan to guide our work and our actions and creating the environment for that to happen. This is all very draft still. This is, we're moving through this process, adding things, taking things away. Our next meeting is on June 18th. We will be meeting in the chambers of Chief and Council the Sunemo at the invitation of our committee member, Joan Brown. We feel this will bring us full circle in our learning about the stories that this land has to offer us. Our intention is to come closer to the creation of the framework that will utilize the 4 pillars as guidelines for the work of reconciliation in the Nanaimo Ladysmith Public Schools District. Once the committee has completed the work, it will come back to the Education Committee as a whole with the help of the committee to explain the work. Then the Education Committee can decide the next steps for consultation on the work, inclusion of the work. This is a subcommittee of the Education Committee, a subcommittee of the board, so this is the board will decide what it wants to do with it next. We're getting there, and we're doing it together. And while the work is taking longer than anticipated, the committee is grateful to the Education Committee for the patience and thoughtful consideration it is showing to us. It's an evolving process. It's one that has no roadmap. We're creating the roads and the map as we move through our work, and we're doing it with the best intention and purpose. It takes time to develop trust and the relationships and eventually the processes that are necessary for meaningful work to occur. And these kinds of timelines do not always align with our very colonial timelines in the board bureaucratic process. So we are thankful that you are allowing us to continue the work. Haitsepka. That is the conclusion of I'm welcome any questions people have at this point.
No, thank you, Steph, for your presentation, your thoughtful presentation, and I don't think it's lost on anybody here how important this work is and the commitment of the people on this committee to making this a better place for our district. So thank you for that. My question is around the budget of it. As to be as transparent as we possibly can be, have we set a budget on how much this is going to cost us? And has there been a budget discussed? How much money have we spent? Should we discuss a budget? Should we put a plan in place to to put it as a line item within the overall budget? What are the thoughts about the costing of this and how we move forward with that?
So there is a cost approximately to date. As the committee knows and the board knows, there was no budget set when this started. And when it was asked to the superintendent, we were told, just do the work and I'll let you know if there's a problem. So we hadn't had to talk about a budget. I'm sensitive to discuss the cost of dates only because I'm concerned that that would become the focus as opposed to the good work. But if people would like to hear the cost to date, then I'll let you know.
To be clear, I don't see that as a hindrance. I just think it's important to be transparent to it. Like, and what, you know, obviously within reason, but I just think it's important that we establish what the cost is.
Okay.
And how much it's going to cost us. That's all.
I do have some numbers. Do you want to talk about the numbers, or?
Through the chair to Trustee Ray. So far, it's been under the superintendent's accounts, and it's still within the reason of reasonable there. I know that when the committee returns to the education committee, that may include next year's budget or not, but we're looking at no costs next year for the work of the board at that time. And then when the plan's put together, then you can put a cost evaluation on that. So the overall cost is really about the consultant working together to write it out, and it's approximately within the same range as all the other consultants for the board or the district, around $15,000. So it's well within reason to have this project done. It's worthy of the costs around that, and Trustee Higginson and I are in conversations about to make sure that we're in that realm.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. And I'll just follow up on that we haven't spent that to date. That's the number that we just sort of started talking about, how much has been spent on these types of projects in the past, you know, in terms of developing those frameworks and with consultants. We do need to ensure, and we're aware now of this number, that we have funds for Hokan Medium translations for the work and visual representations of the work, and as well as the continued services of our consultant. This work could not have happened without her knowledge and ability to, I mean, just as a consultant to engage everyone, but also her community connections and her awareness of culture and protocol have been invaluable to the work. So ensuring that we can get the work done within the right time. And if it looks like it might need more money, then of course we'd have to come to you guys to talk about why and justify it. But the expectation is that this committee wraps up its work, brings it back for people to, you know, look at it and puts it out to the community for consultation, and then it becomes the staff work. This was a board goal. We set this goal together as a board. So now we're doing the work to ensure that there's a strong foundation of the work, and then our staff can do it. I don't know if Anne has anything she wants to add to it, or.
No. Oh, I'm next already. Thank you, Stephanie. Like it was really powerful to see your passion. Thank you for that. That was beautiful. I guess my question would be, how are we, in regards to respecting timelines, but also not having to wrap things up? How have we heard from the group about keeping the lines of communication open beyond even this board? Mm-hmm. Like, what kind of things are put in place for the future kind of the project?
Well, I think the future of the project lies with us as the whole education committee first. You know, we took this on as a committee in June, as a last June, almost a year ago. And then the work will come back to us, and then it will become, you know, part of the district's work and our daily, part of our strategic plan and the expectation of how everybody then moves forward. Does that answer your question? So what happens after?
A little bit. I was kind of looking more for, well, I guess more John and the school district's next steps with the next board. You know, kind of that transitional piece.
Mm-hmm.
John?
So the design of the committee is for the board to do some work around the framework, so that it's giving the guidelines to the staff to continue the work. So it's similar to the it is a fourth goal in the district.
except we don't, right at this point in time, the goal is reconciliation, but there's no guidelines under that for the work to be done from us. So we're venturing out and doing work to work on Aboriginal culture, Aboriginal language, all those things, but nothing is in writing from the board as to say that's the direction you want us to go. So once that's completed, it'll just align us in the common practices that we're trying to establish. That will follow any board because it will be a board goal, right? And so, and that's right, and that you would move, there'd have to be a motion and a conversation, consultation about moving out of those 4 district goals. Yep.
As the second trustee on this committee, I'd like to make sure everyone knows that it is being led by our Aboriginal people. Joan Brown is deep in culture and an extraordinary leader. Pearl Harris from Stamanis, rather, and Lawrence Mitchell from Stamanis, Jones with Sanemo. It's the oh, and yeah, I had it up there, Mid-Island Métis. Without doubt, it's the most powerful committee, certainly the most unique committee I've ever been on. I'd like to report I've yet to cry.
He's the only one.
But I've been close. I just want everyone to know that this is being done not in the colonial way. It is being done where you know you're finished when you're finished is the concept. There's a lot of time spent connecting with each other, connecting with the earth, connecting with the culture and language. It's slow, and yet I think we're speeding along, really. It's been beautiful, beautiful work, and hopefully we'll have something that staff can take and implement in First Nations cultural sort of way. We're getting closer than we expected, and I'm quite sure we'll have something for September. Is that your report?
Yes, that is it.
District Principal Ann Tenning.
I was just here to listen. I'm just another member at the table with the rest of the group, so thank you, Trustee Higginson, for your report.
So we'll leave it there. Yes?
Bill, I was wondering if the board would be able to, we have some guests presenting and they're last on the list here, and they just came.
Yes.
And I know that there need to be a motion.
Any objection to change in order, and we bring
12.1?
12.1 next on the podium.
Oh.
Seeing no objection, the Barsby crew. Thanks, John.
Yeah. So I'm sure this group is well able to explain themselves, and they're probably the only group that can unlevel this room with me on one end and them on the other. But this was posed from the board about 2 years ago when we began some conversations about the closure of Woodlands and where we were going with our schools, and some identities around John Barsby. The board was very interested in some grassroots conversations at the school level as to moving itself into celebrating the good work that they've been doing all these years, in both in athletics and academics and in working with students and et cetera. And so when given an opportunity to go out to Barsby just about 3 months ago and observed a request around an academy, I actually came back and challenged them to come up with something bigger and think outside the box. And so I'm very excited to be able to present this as a possibility as we move forward. I want to explain a piece to this. This is not an academy request. All this is under the purview of a principal of the school. They can make these types of decisions, but they are also looking and wanting to celebrate with you as a board and your again, look into what they want to get accomplished, and hopefully it fits some of the questions that you had around it. So I'm going to turn it over to two wonderful young people. Just remember who the elder is amongst us.
Yes, sir. All right. My name is Rob Stevenson. I'm a teacher at John Barby High School. I've been fortunate to coach football there as well for 22 years and acted as athletic director for 21.
My name is Curtis Visa. I'm in my first year at John Barsby, and my first year coaching with John Barsby football, and come out of a pretty fun career with strength conditioning.
Okay. So we're going to experience, celebrate what we've come up with here is our Mastering Performance program that we're beginning to initiate at the school. There's some context behind it. For 22 years of trial and error running the football program, we've learned a whole lot. We've consistently been one of the smallest and sometimes the smallest school in British Columbia with the football program. Yet during this period, we've been in 9 British Columbia championship games. This means that 41% of the seasons have seen us at a championship game. This makes us a statistical outlier, okay, that is unmatched in any public high school in any sport, not just football. There are great lessons to have learned that we've learned from this experience. The reason for this, and I'm going to call it performance, which is your end game, has been due to 2 main factors throughout this period of time: mastery of fundamentals, all skills all the time, and a meritocratic approach that the players, a meritocratic approach from the players and coaches who are known for their commitment, effort, and talent in that order. The byproduct has been passion throughout. A lot of passion there from a lot of people. And passion breeds individual and team success. Convinced of that. School context. Barsby's a small building with a set of socioeconomic challenges that have had an impact on enrollment and participation in school life. This is due to several historic factors. One, in my experience, and I'm speaking on behalf of Rob Stevenson here, we've had to overcome decades of, for lack of a better word, prejudice based on a set of misinterpretations that have caused a degree of avoidance in terms of enrollment. Some people have avoided going to our school that could, in varying degrees over time. Secondly, we were particularly, again, for enrollment, challenged by declining enrollment in the past 16 years, and in the past several years just by the district reorganization, which is understandable. The response, though, to this stimuli, I'll call it, within the building has been to leverage our strengths as a staff, school and community, to be as efficient and mutually supportive as possible. The stresses and challenges of this situation have been a crucible by which innovation and teamwork have been forged within the building. The building has become amazingly, internally and structurally out of necessity, and along the way has become imbued with pride and a spirit of teamwork and interdepartmental collaboration. Our young people are well served in the building, and we're ready to springboard forward based on our experience. Importantly, a lot of extracurricular and curricular operations and values have cross-pollinated and permeated within the building. Mastery and performance now. The timing is great. The new curriculum, board-authorized courses, and our extracurricular programs have meshed in a very innovative way to create an unmatched opportunity for the students to follow their athletic passion to its fullest extent. This is going to be a multi-sport project from the outset, not just football. It's multi-sport. Our performance training program combines university-level strength, speed, agility, and developmental training with sport-specific courses and training within the context of our PE program. We've also developed a pathway for students to train themselves in a holistic part of sport via learning opportunities in sports management, marketing, first aid, sport journalism, broadcasting, videography, photography, multimedia projects, coaching development, officiating, and multi-sport theory. On top of this, leadership opportunities within our feeder system will occur with our students doing work with elementary age students, doing a lot of outreach to our feeder programs. Taken as a whole, this will develop a spirit of inquiry among the program participants that will be truly open-ended. Over successive years of participation in the program, students will observe, reflect, and plan to further their accomplishments and reflect the passion they develop along their journey. The long-term goal is to produce generations of leaders across not just the athletics spectrum, but in the spectrum of life, mastering performance in the future. Our approach over the next 4 years will be to proceed with our program in all of its various components, do a rigorous self-scout, revise, and refine. So, we're going to go through year one, really take a close look at ourselves, and build a better mousetrap for year two. Okay. We'll report out to our colleagues in administration regarding our progress. The project begins with multi-sport mastery and performance as a large platform for learning, but ultimately we would like to share and incorporate our successes, our cookbook, and outcomes not only in athletics specifically, but within the cross disciplines within our building. We don't want to stand alone in the building, but rather we would like to contribute to a building that stands alone together, a powerful, collaborative, highly integrated school community. One of the great things about this undertaking is going to be the passion for learning that occurs not just with the students, but with the staff and administration as we accomplish our goals and overcome challenges along the way. The specifics 5 and 10 years from now are going to be hard to quantify, but we really do see greatness in the mid to far horizon. We would be very thankful for any support our school district can provide as we proceed with this journey, and would be very happy to share our progress as we go and learn and build. We've got a video presentation, and
the structure of the program is very unique. Taken away from the academy approach, where it's a one sport focus, where they have time on field, time on ice, on sand, whatever it might be. That component was taken away. And what we're looking at is physical literacy, as that's kind of been much of a gap for us to come across. The way we're going to structure it is they'll have a week-to-week basis where they're going to have a program set out that we customize for them. The testing parameters will be quantitative and qualitative assessment, quantitative and physical testing, qualitative and core movement evaluations. So when I was working with the Canadian Sport Institute, we set out a bunch of many parameters still used in the Victoria Sports School, where they will look at a component of movement and have a checklist that we've created that we can say yes or no to. So it's like students have a chance to look at what they've done. So have a video of something done week 1, comparison to week 12, comparison to week 24, whatever it might be. Now, what we're doing as well with this videography piece, they're going to be able to put it on a website that we create with our tech department. So each student will have a free website made, so even the idea of ongoing communication with parents, they can see what they're doing. The students have a chance to showcase who they are and be proud of something more. Now, the cool part with that is not just one kind of athlete. And as we know, there's lots of different psychology pieces that come with each athlete. Different sports provide different characteristics to bring out different people. When we bring them all together, we create something quite a bit more than what we could ever imagine. Having volleyball and basketball and soccer, whatever it might be, whatever made them who they are, they get to have different ideas and bounce more off of them. So that's really exciting as well. Also in that, we're going to have pieces where we can record and see what's going on. So they're week-to-week, day-to-day work. They have a reflection piece, but it's not just about being an athlete or being anything more than that. It's asking, what's going well for you right now? What's going well in your life? Checking on nutrition, being able to talk about, here's how we eat for performance, but here's how we eat just to function as a regular person. The hydration, the sleep, the stresses, the anxiety levels. And that's something that we see quite a bit, probably across everyone, is the anxiety levels of our students, and finding ways to, how can we help them? And maybe it's written, maybe they want to talk about it, maybe it's a video they want to make or a blog on their website. So we're finding ways to bridge that. all within a sport program, which is pretty unique from what I've seen and experienced working with the other academies as well. So overall, we've got a pretty fun project. Before we start, I want to thank Dale for coming in and filming with us. So we really appreciate all your hard work, and we're very excited to show it.
Yeah, so passing the baton back over here, kids, they want to, if they like something, they're probably good at it. Follow your bliss and doors will open for you. And we're attempting to put in place a program where young people can go find their niche, make their mark, and be with other kindred souls. And that has an energy of itself. It's a force multiplier, And so you picture a game day in any given sport. You've got the athletes out there, but you're gonna have the people writing about it. You're gonna have the people videotaping. You're gonna have the people providing the first aid. You're gonna have officials. You're gonna have the marketing piece. Making the games happening. Basic sport management, along with the coaching tools. And at the tail end of this, what we're really looking for are a whole generation of leaders in public service, sport being the one big platform for that, to go into our community and take my job, so I can hold the sticks of the game, and watch them do their thing, and it enriches the community in Nanaimo. And a lot of these people are going to be going to school up top here, and some will come back as teachers. Some will go out and build lives on their experience. They'll find something that they learn along the way that they really want to pour their heart and soul in. Speaking of football specifically, we get a few guys to go off and play university, but they win the genetic lottery or the financial and intellectual that you can go out there and do that. But a lot of our great successes are people that come out there who know how to think under duress, need to know how to train, who need to function under pressure, work as a team, etc. And they go out there and they take that skill set into whatever they have. They run their businesses, they're forming on crews, they're great husbands and family guys, etc. So it's not what you learn, it's how you learn it, and that's a big piece as well with us. And we want to take this again, like I said, using sport at the beginning and multi-sport, so kids can take their unique sport-specific PE courses, come into the performance facility, the training facility, and train and up their game so they're bigger, faster, stronger, quicker twitch, and then go out there and compete with that and leverage their hard work to find some successes. Excited as heck, excited as heck. Yeah. And again, the DNA of this is, quite frankly, 22, 23 years of trial and error. You run into a lot of walls. You've got a finite amount of people. You can't go over to the enrollment store and say, I need 100 more people and 6 great big offensive linemen. You've got what you've got in the hallways, and you give them all you got, right? And down the road, I think it'll be a draw to the building, and that's why I mentioned enrollment. It's a tough climate out there, right? Everybody's got their struggles in their buildings, and so we're going to use what we've got here at John Barsby and do the best we can for it. Yep.
I like how I'm really happy that we have this today. Thank you. Optical illusion. It's optical illusion.
And it's to finish that thought, it's not going to be just about sport. Again, we're going to learn a lot of things, and there's a lot of interdepartmental strength and staff strength within the building. We've got great photography programs, we've got great technology programs, our foods programs are great, and so there's going to be the ability of some of the things we're doing to cross-pollinate again within some of our methodologies be used by other departments, and definitely helping each other. Like we're a big platform for a lot of other people to come bring their skill set, right?
I know you're not finished, but
yeah, got time here.
Our board chair has a penchant for crying, and before he starts to cry here, he wants to say something.
Thank you guys, sincerely, your passion is infectious. A couple things that you did say is so true and so unjust is the Varsity does get a better reputation, and it's completely and totally unjust.
Sticks in my craw.
And it is one of the best high schools we have in the district, and it is because people like you and the staff that we have here and the students that go there, it is. I think this is a wonderful idea. It's been successful at Departure Bay Echo School. Now we can't keep people away from that school, and all we need to do is articulate what a great school Barsby is and programs like this moving forward. So congratulations and well done, guys. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And if we could introduce the film. Yeah, good if we could introduce the film produced and directed by Dale Barkos.
You're going to see a lot of mastery of fundamentals. Okay, fundamentals being the key word here. Philosophically, what we're looking for is the kids to work in an environment where they're following their passion. And doors will open for them that way. If they're pursuing a given activity, they're going to find that they're with like minds, like kindred souls, and they'll find a lot of support with that approach. We want to do this in a kind of a meritocratic way. You're going to be known for your commitment, effort, and talent in that order. And people usually do quite well in that setting when they are, again, following their passion. We're going to leverage the strengths of the new curriculum and board-authorized courses to give kids an opportunity to find that piece of the whole picture that they want to pursue, and lead them on to opportunities after high school.
Well, I think at Barsby we've always really put the student first, and a lot of our students, we're really seeing them very goal-driven, goal-oriented. The last few years I've had a pleasure to teach people who, one student is going with a partial scholarship for track to University of Hawaii on Oahu. Another one who's very high up in nationals for rowing and he knew right away he wanted to bioengineer prosthetic limbs. And so basically enhanced programming really would help these, I would call them elite athletes.
At John Barsby, the performance program that we're going to be running here is multifaceted. Now with the performance part that I'm going to be doing, they're going to be learning how to lift properly, proper strength conditioning work. They're going to learn how to proper lifts, also learn how to customize their own programs. Look at yearly long training programs where to peak, how to go about the lifts, where they need to recover, where they should be at their optimal performance. What else we're doing is looking at recovery as well as proper body mechanics, proper nutrition. We're trying to cover the entire aspect of a student athlete in their life.
With the mastery learning that we've been looking at switching to with Barsby, it offers a real opportunity with this program. In our program, we have a lot of kids that look to go on to culinary arts, move on to actual chef training programs at various schools. BIU takes a lot of our students toward their program. Mastery learning would allow them to have a lot more of a hands-on approach in here to head off to university in a much more prepared fashion, ready for the rigors of a program that's a lot more in-depth. So.
In terms of mastery learning, this is definitely a course which, like I said before at the beginning, was it starts as you can start as a beginner and you can advance as far as you wish in terms of the skill. I don't limit students in terms of saying you're a grade 12 student, you have to do this set curriculum. I really have a lot of independence with students and their motivational levels. I have some students that will just strictly be a beginner and they'll work through the basic week-by-week plans, but the kids that really grasp onto it, I push them and challenge them so they're working towards potentially being a future photographer out there in our town and in Nanaimo.
So you got to take care of your education, play the sport as hard as well as you can, and take that zen over into your other pursuits, right? And that's what I think the great success of our program is there's so many guys that find the spirit of what we did. You know, words like finish, you know, words like never quit, right? You know, those kind of things. And then they focus, intensity. They take it into their pursuits, and it's that relentless drive that can overcome talent in some cases. But you definitely find a lot of excellence.
I get why you guys are doing this, and I think a lot of people don't necessarily understand how big this actually is for what you're doing. So I applaud you for that. I have a lot of concerns around early specialization in sport with youth. I have a lot of concerns. So to see that you're taking a multi-sport approach is so fantastic to hear, and that you're taking a physical literacy approach. And really what I heard from you is that sport is the vehicle for growing our leaders. Sport is not the end game. No. It's simply the vehicle that a student could choose to learn the skills they need to learn to be that leader we want in the community. And man, I applaud you too for that work, because there's nothing more important than that.
Okay. Well said.
Ripley. Wow, Deepak, Chair, good job. You almost took the words out of my mouth. Well, actually, one thing I was going to ask is, Coach, how long have you been part of this program, this success? Have you been?
From the beginning, 1996.
I get that sense. I get that sense that, that a large congratulations are to you. Just seeing your passion and that passion, like when people are where they're supposed to be, and their passion is just infectious, right? So thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I really think there's a seat at the table for everybody, and a place where people find their own individual greatness as well as team greatness.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for that.
Trustee Higginson.
A similar notion, I really love the multi-sport aspect of this. Like, I just think this is fantastic. So fantastic, because, it allows kids to learn really important fundamental skills. My son is a lacrosse player, and I'm like, you have to eat properly right now. Right? So I love that you guys are teaching these skills that kids can then use to engage with the sports that they love outside of school time. I think that's excellent and amazing. And I really agree with the things you said about the lessons that kids learn through team sport. As much as I hate how much time I'm spending on the road right now, I can't teach my kids the lessons that they're learning through being part of team sports. It's, so I'll give up my weekends because it's really important. At least they're lessons I think that are great. So I really love the multi-sport aspect of this. I think it's fantastic. I love, your talk about the board authorized courses and the personalized nature of the new curriculum. I think something like, utilizing the ability to have board authorized courses creates such a unique opportunity to deliver public education that truly reflects the community we're in. And I think, this is an amazing opportunity for our students. So thank you for your passion, and as well as the development of this for a multi-sport aspect. I think it's great. And the mastery of learning, I just think it's all fantastic. Thanks.
And you know, to reply to the multi-sport concept, so sports, all sports except chess and checkers are hips and thighs, right? And you know, the different set of, you're competing, you've got a different set of coaches with a different set of skills that they also impart. The cross-pollination piece is big, and you know, people are able to leave one sport to make themselves better. And when your bottle's full of football, you put on your basketball shoes, and when you're done with that, you put on your track shoes.
Yeah.
Can I say? John? Rob, you said that comment to me in 1997. The only change to that comment is your hips and thighs are a lot bigger, just like mine.
Thank you. Well, some of what I was going to say has been said, so I won't repeat a lot of it, but of course, the multi-sport piece is fantastic. But what I liked seeing was this video wasn't just about sports. That the kids who can't play sports, aren't going to play sports, could see themselves in that video, whether it was in the theater piece, whether it was with Mr. Letourneau and with the photography piece, that this isn't about any one particular skill. This is about a broad-based approach to mastery and leadership. And while I totally respect and understand why we don't want to call it an academy, I do think that we got to get the word out here that we're doing something here, that this is there's a real opportunity. I know what I was saying, I don't want to say it. I think there's a real this can be a thing that will really grow Barsby and change this much undeserved. I hate the way some people view Barsby. I have a deep passionate love for John Barsby and for the Harewood community. And when I look at Barsby, I see the heart and the soul of all that's good and right in Harewood. And so I want to really see us get the word out about what we're doing at Barsby and make sure people know that they should come and that this is a good place to be.
You know, and what you said about all the other endeavors, right? These kids all grew up together since kindergarten to grade 12. They sat next to each other in grade 3, grade 4. Some go on to sports, some go on to other activities. But there's one thing that's really in common, again, which is the discipline it takes to gain mastery of something. The trial, fail, build a better mousetrap, proceed forward, collaborate with people, find a better way, matriculate your way forward, right? And those lessons transcend one activity. That's what that.
Miss Sutton. Did
No,
you?
it was, sorry.
No.
Rob.
Oh, okay, Rob.
Justin was next.
Miss Rob?
No.
Rob.
I'm going to be something, but no, thanks, Rob and the new teacher there that I already met before, but
yeah,
I'm going to say, no, good on you, because when I was at Barsby and had the opportunity to be in there as day caretaker, the one thing that always came about you and your football program was keeping the kids in school. Keeping the kids learning, making the kids do what they need to do, and I'm glad you stretched that out, because you have a passion for those students that you're giving to the other teachers. Now you have another person that has the same passion that can build within it. And you're doing it late in your career, which means hopefully there's somebody that will follow in your footsteps and carry it on. And that's quite a bit. So good on you. Barsby is a gem. Great administrators, from Robin that supported you, from Deb that took over, and from the previous ones, because for the 22 years you were there, you worked great with your administrators to do things with that football and allow those kids to be with you in a way that a lot of them are. They had success, and that's good on you. So keep it up.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Green.
I was part of the very first graduating class of the John Barsby, and I'm very proud of that fact. And anybody that's ever walked through the doors or walked the halls knows that it's a true gem. It doesn't, there's always that perception out there, but we always, those of us that have been there, know what it's truly about. And you kind of exemplify that. That's truly an amazing thing. Keep it up. It's just great to see my old building doing so well.
Thank you. Pass that on to the guys and gals.
Trustee Sullivan?
I just want to thank you guys a lot, and I know that the bottom line is the end game is to help these people be good people, and that's where you're at with all this, and the commitment that you've made for 22 years. That's unbelievable that you've been able to you've helped an awful lot of kids along the way. And I never thought I'd meet somebody bigger than you. It's a little scary. Thanks.
And to tell you the truth, though, it's been a great ride, and it's been passionate and fully supported by staff, and especially admin as well. We've never been anywhere but a good place within the building, and it's fun. Still is.
I think it's my turn. First of all, I've known you, Coach, for 18 years. First time I saw you was in the cafeteria. I looked across, you scared the out of me. Thought, what a mean-looking son of a gun he is. Discovered that you have a heart as big as all outdoors, and that you, through your football team, have created the energy that makes Barsby what it is today, and beyond the school into the community. It's been awesome. And I'm really excited about that talent that you have spreading out to other sports. By the way, known you for 18 years, and first time I've come up with a new nickname for you, Tiny. So I never thought of that one before. I need to tell everyone here one story about a grade 10 student at Barsby who was not academically strong, or didn't think he was, didn't know he was, and was going to drop out of school. And somehow he got talking with Coach Stevenson, and I believe you had him in your class for the last 2 years. At least you kept your eye on his academic side, and the deal was passing wasn't good enough. Do as well as I think you should. When he graduated, this young fellow went to Queens on a scholarship and joined 3 other Barsby students produced out of that program. So not only has that program built the spirit of that community and that school, but it sent kids along, and Coach kept telling me, yeah, it's great to get kids off to university, but I want to build a kid who'll be a foreman of his construction crew, not the guy just on the other end of the shovel. By the way, that young man graduated in engineering at Queens, then did a master's of engineering at Queens. This is a dropout in grade 10, and completed a PhD in engineering at Queens. That's the product that this man has produced, and now we're expanding that with what I believe and I'm sure will be a super assistance. And you're not late in your career, Rob. Not at all. I just can't wait to see what you guys do.
Thanks for those remarks, Mr. Robinson. And just want to make it clear, like, we didn't produce him, we just helped him find himself. And he had good folks and a lot of mentors along the way besides us, plus myself. But thank you.
Thank you for coming. Yeah.
Sorry, just before everybody leaves, Deb, this might be your last meeting with us. Ms. Marshall's retiring at the end of the year. I know. This is very sad. So we've just been talking about what a wonderful school this is, and your staff is amazing, and I think we have to give you some accolades as well, and thank you deeply for your career.
By the way, do your kids know you're retiring?
You know.
Because I met with 2 of your students and I almost said something, and then I thought I better not. So I didn't. Thanks very much, all of you, for coming. Awesome presentations. You fired us all up.
You have 2 more
Yeah.
I'm wondering, do you want to let people have a 2-minute break or not?
Good idea. Yeah, this is going to be a long meeting, so let's take a short break, have a coffee or whatever it is you need. What an amazing presentation.
Bang because you don't have enough prestige.
What was the other fellow's name?
Curtis.
Curtis.
That's the way I used to look.
Oh, I'm sure you did. Are you as tall as he was?
So we have 45 minutes before we have to have an extension.
Almost look like you saw something there. Just like all their facial features.
I think Tiny has got it.
All right, let's get this going.
Okay.
45 minutes before we have to
Director of Finance, Sutton.
Well, first of all, I just wanted to thank Mr. Blaine for booting me out of the lineup and making me follow the last group because, wow, awfully large shoes to fill. So I don't expect as much enthusiasm as those guys, but we'll give it a whirl. So tonight's format's a little different. As per the request of the board, we wanted to give the line-by-line details so that you could see all of the initiatives sort of in the budget, and so not the format that you're used to looking at. I'm hoping that it's as clear as mud. I know that you received it last night. Hopefully you've had time to look at it. My thought process is, considering the time, go through it pretty quickly, and then questions that you have most likely will clarify a lot of things, I'm hoping. So the information sheet is put together just to give you an overview of the budget process, just kind of reiterating that we align the entire process around our district goals, strategies. We're in year 2 of a 3-year plan, and then the actual process and how it sort of starts all the way through to the finish. One of the big things, of course, is that budgets are always contingent on enrollment, whether it's inclining, whether it's flat, or whether it's declining, always makes a play on what resources we've got available to allocate out to the schools and to the initiatives that we would like to see. I am sorry, I'm fighting the end of a bug, so excuse me. So then, of course, we present the budget, draft budget, then we do any tweaking that's required, and then bring it to you for bylaw. So tonight, everything that we've discussed over the last few months is now in the budget, and now it's basically just giving you an overview before we bring you the ministry document for bylaw approval in the next week. Budget preparation. Our process is to take the annual amended budget that we're currently running for the 17-18 year, or whatever current year we're in, and essentially roll that over and then strip out all of the one-time initiatives that may have been added in, strip out all of the one-time funding that might have happened, grants, one-time revenue, things like that. And then we look at what our enrollments are. You know, all the items that are on here are things that we have to be cognizant of. We also look at sort of some historical data of what are the things that have come up over prior years that have had an impact that we need to be fiscally responsible for and account for in the budget. One-time things we're not so concerned about, but things that rear its head every so often or on a consistent basis, we're adding in to make sure that everything is, that we're covered, sort of thing. This year, some of the notables that we wanted to bring to your attention was that our basic student enrollment increased by 155.767 FTE over the amended budget of 17-18. Combined with the rest of the block pieces, there's an increase revenue of $3.4 million. One of the other items that we had to consider was the QP hourly rate increase. We did reduce the overall benefit rates. There's 2 things here. The benefit rates substantiate a slight decrease. However, as we've previously discussed, there is the employer health tax that is coming at us, and it's going to be a crossover dual payment for the district for a period of next year's budget and a period of the following year's budget that we need to fund. We have recommended that because this is a one-time expenditure, that we would not fund it out of the district's operating budget, that we would fund that out of restricted surplus so that we don't take away from the initiatives that we want to see in the budget. And it's not something that that's an MSP related benefit only. It doesn't speak to all the other benefits, which again, overall benefits needed to be reduced slightly. This falls outside of that. So we've earmarked it, but we're using restricted for that, is our recommendation. Staff revised recommendation and board approved the district to maintain the 4 community school coordinators, and that was funded from restricted surplus. Funds have been set aside for potential salary increases and potential termination pay that historically happens, so we like to be cognizant of that. EA staffing, generally over the course of the year, we add supports for EA staffing. When we get to the annual budget, we pull those temporary resources back out and we start over again. This year, it was a decision to leave those supports in and not create sort of the staffing anxiety out there, the administrative burden and all of the rest that sort of goes with that process. So that was something that we opted to add or to keep in this budget. And then the strategies that have been discussed over the course of the last few weeks, months, $2.5 million in the 18-19 and the 1.4 carried over from 17-18. Classroom Enhancement Fund, there is an overall decrease, which we knew that was happening because last year was year 1. So of course there was capital, there was more overhead. This year, the parameters or guidelines for funding are changed, so the overall fund is decreased, but it's more related to the overhead. The staffing is being maintained at the levels it was last year. One item is that the remedy will be determined, the funding for the remedy will be determined in the fall, so it will be in the amended budget, not in this budget. And of course, 17-18 surplus will be known officially at the end of this fiscal year, and anything that is going to be added and allocated into the 18-19 budget will be done so after the financial statements have been produced. And any remaining surpluses in the special purpose funds will be allocated into the amended budget as deferred revenue when they are known. Should I pause for questions?
hits or layoffs towards CP staff for probably the first time in, I'm going to say, 17 years that we haven't seen a loss, other than a few reductions in EAs, which will come back normally under the September enrollment and the contingency fund spent. They just come right back in because they're reduced, as you said on the picture or prior to in the comments. But if there is additional funding, there is areas, and I do want just to put that on notice that not debating this year, say whatever, but some of the considerations that funding is stable and we do grow, that those areas should be looked at. So that's just my comment. I'm not going to go through the numbers because I know that there's a surplus that's found for about $8+ million, and that scares me. Right now.
Thank you. Just looking at rentals and leases, which is the third page in. I see that in the 2018 amended, it says 531,000 plus down to 497. So we're looking at a loss of about almost 30, just almost a little over 34,000. Is that based on? Are we thinking we just won't have the space to like why are we losing those kind of rentals, or is there something going on that we should be concerned about?
I actually can't speak to the, okay, can you? Yes, please.
Yeah, one of the ones that
Yeah.
I'm aware of is the portion of Dufferin that's leased to Discover Montessori.
Right, okay.
They're building their own building, and
Okay.
their lease, it's month to month as of July 1. It's going to expire at the end of December.
Okay.
So we've factored in that revenue loss.
Okay.
So, Ms. Sutton, if you could take as much time as you need and then give us time for questions intermittent with your presentation.
Will do.
Rather than interfering here, there, and wherever.
So page 71 of 90 in the pink booklet is where I will start. So as I spoke to in the information sheet, the first page is basically a summary of what we call the block funding. And this is our student enrollment and some factors that the ministry provides us funding for. Overall, 155.767 increases in student FTE. Important to note that is not head count, that is FTE, and that is a different number. There can be students that are taking particular courses, 0.125. There's a bit of a differential between what would be head count and what would be FTE. Funding purposes are FTE, so the 155 plus the differences that you see in the other factors is an overall increase of $3.4 million. On page 72 of 90. Basically, I was only going to speak to the things that I've sort of added the notes to, as they're the things that kind of speak, or there's reasons for the special purpose funds. The classroom enhancement fund, as I spoke to, there is a difference of funding there. The AFG, that's an in and an out. It's just a accounting scenario. Community Link, there was an increase in funding. And our Ready, Set, Learn, there was a small decrease there due to the Rutherford closure. Other revenue, the changes there are just like, as I spoke to earlier, it's just the change in our grants from year to year. When we get to the annual budget, we pull what we're not 100% sure of until that funding is determined, and that ends up in the amended budget. So it's just wanting to make sure that we're not adding revenue that we don't know is happening at this particular point in time. Page 73 of 90. Continuation of grant removal. Substantial one was the McGurr Playground, so of course that was 17-18, not applicable 18-19. These things come out. Some changes to our capital revenue, which were the classroom enhancement funding that we received last year, as well as our approved capital projects. There will be no classroom enhancement capital this year. However, the capital projects, the district's capital projects, will be reflected in the amended. They are not 100% confirmed, so we're just, that will be in the amended budget. And the local capital, of course, last year, as you recall, we had land sales, and that revenue obviously comes out for this year. And our transfer to local capital, we had a transfer due to savings from the reduction in teacher salary that we moved over to local capital, as we're not 100% sure about that funding. So still awaiting December 2018 to see what happens with that. So that, of course, is just our tech plan. Capital loans is what's in our local capital. 74 of 90. This is where I referred earlier to our special purpose funds. The balances at the end of the year, if applicable, are rolled into the next year's budget as deferred revenue, and those resources are then available for use within the special purpose funds they belong to. So the only thing that we have currently is we've estimated the local capital revenue so that we could set up the potential local capital jobs to give an idea as to what we believe it's going to look like. It is premature, but our best estimate at this time. That will, of course, change in the amended budget. We know we've got some $66,000 in AC funding, which is After School Sports Initiative funding that we received this year. It's for next year, so we were able to add that in. And then the $238,568, that was the decision to maintain the 4 CSCs for 18-19. So those were just some of the revenue changes, high level, that we wanted to earmark for you. So moving on to the administrative officers under the expenditures. Again, I've tried to detail where the changes are. And overall, we have an increase of 6.4, predominantly due to the budget strategies to increase the supports at the elementary schools, some prorated FTE to reflect full year costs, Rutherford closure, and then just some moving of principal to district principal and so forth, as explained in the notes for you. 75 of 90, this information was added in last year, end of year before, just to provide a bit of clarity as to the annual facilities grant and the projects. This is handled completely by the facilities department. Putting it in here for you, they of course would have presented, I believe, already their plan. This just reiterates it. And of course there's no comparators because last year it's not comparable. It's its own target last year. So this year is just showing you what the items are this year and the funding. Page 76 of 90, again, it's in the budget document just because it's there, but there is no funding for this year, so it's basically showing you the reversal of $5 million of revenue that we don't have this year. It was targeted last year for CEF capital. It is not available this year. However, the actual district, as I said earlier, the district capital projects will be reflected in the amended budget. So 77 of 90 is our education assistant summary. And again, noting where the changes are, overall increase here of 3.26. And mostly these are budget strategies, reorganization of Community Link, which is a targeted fund, a little AB-Ed adjustments, again, targeted fund, and a reclass because our EAs do the supervision aid, just an alternate rate, so just a cleanup item there to move it into EA. So overall increase. Page 78 of 90. Teaching staff, overall increase of 21.65 FTE. Again, budget strategies that were previously presented. Enrollment was another driver here. Enrollment figures, of course, drive staffing in schools. Invested in capital assets, this is just mirroring the what we purchased from our local our transfer to local capital, our lease investments, and then our amortization of capital assets is just our capital assets and the amortization that we acknowledge each year. $79 of 90, other professionals. So the first item, salaries are within the AFG project, so we are just showing it here to be transparent as to the fact that we actually have the FTE in here, but we have to then remove it because it's within the AFG target. So it's just to show you them. Previous years, There was a bit of a disconnect with FTE because AFG, FTE was not included in the budget. It was always an item underneath all of the budget documents saying this excludes special purpose and AFG, FTE, and so we've made that change in the last couple of years to just be a bit more transparent and to have the figures accurately reflect what's happening out there. So, again, itemized for you, HR reorganization, learning services reorganization, a couple of changes due to retirement, and then temporary position removed, replacement of one position to an alternate position. Page 80 of 90, we have budget strategy for the ISE, for homestay coordinator. CEF, under the CEF funding, position that we're not carrying on, an increase to a position that we do under that same fund. And then some prorating being increased to full year and budget strategy again. The last couple items are, I spoke to earlier, are us earmarking funds for potential salary increases and potential funds that we would have to come up with for any sort of terminations that may arise. Hopefully not so much. 81 of 90. Premiums and allowances, we did increase our maternity pay budget just due to the costs that we're noticing. Release time, I don't know how detailed we want to get into that. Release time is provided to schools based on enrollment, some of it based on enrollment, some of it based on some contractual obligation. A large part of it, though, is money that that schools move around from alternate budget lines, could be supplies, could be whatever, for particular initiatives, or learning services is doing some sort of initiative and release time is provided. So money is put into release time from other sources. So these are just the changes of what was in the amended budget to what's in the current budget. Page 82 of 90 moves us into support staff. And again, AFG salaries are shown, or AFG FTE is shown here, and then the salary is cleared as it is in the AFG budget center. We have the 0.5 bus driver as per the Rutherford bus route being maintained. And then a couple of adjustments for last year. We had a buyer tagged under the CEF. It turned out to be a payroll specialist. So this is the correcting entry. Again, just some housekeeping correcting entries. The emergency caretaker, they have kept that. Last year it was a prorated figure. It is a 0.5 FTE. The carpenter was again last year prorated. It's a 3-year strategy. This year it's now full FTE. There is nothing of note on page 83 of 90. 84 of 90. HR has added a 0.5 FTE under the CEF overhead. More, it was a shift from the position that they had removed. A removal of some temporary FTE in the IS department that was a one-time. It's a little minor change to the trim crew hours in maintenance. And again, FTE added one time. And the other part of that payroll specialist being added as opposed to the buyer. Page 85 of 90. Secretarial time, an overall reduction of 0.514, and this is essentially due to the Rutherford closure. We also altered the formula to change the allocations out to school to support them to align better with their enrollment. So overall, 0.796 here added to the 3.264 EAs is an overall increase to QP of 4.06 FTE. Page 86 of 90, again, I don't know how much detail you'd like me to go into. I have included a summary sheet where I have set attachment. The attachment is breaking down the detail. Where I have put in a bullet, that is the description. So I might just ask if more detail is required here or whether we should look at questions. I will say that, again, local capital on the following page will be adjusted in the annual amended budget. But I think the supplies item is the last one that's got a lot of detail in it. So I think it might be prudent to ask if there's questions or how much detail you would like.
I think you should proceed. I don't see any weapons. Well, yes, well.
It's just that I don't know if it was missed in an error, but in the general fund, you have one transportation, so I wasn't quite sure where that line's in the budget.
Sorry, Rob, I'm not following. Sorry, what?
Well, see where they say there, they got the general forms, they got the IS and the rest of them, and then where is the general form and transportation?
What page are you, where are we at? Where are we at? Where are we at?
On 84, and then there is the mention of mechanics on this slide. I just don't know if that was just missed.
And so, sorry, one more time. What is it that you're missing?
General forms on the very top,
Mm-hmm.
right? You list them.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't list the transportation form in there, right? It has it has the computers, it has the IS, it has the two, one in carpentry, one in electrical. And you look, there's mention of, it's got the operations general form, there's not a mention of the one transportation.
I'm gonna have to look into that, Rob, and get back to you.
They're budgeted as mechanics.
Is that what it is?
Yeah, I'm just,
We would be missing the general fund rate.
that's
So
all,
it needs to be fixed.
that's all.
Yeah.
I just don't wanna say somebody's seen that it comes up and then they say, well, we don't have one.
Nope, good, perfect, thank you.
We'll let you finish before we take any more questions.
Okay, so what you're saying is you want me to go through each of the supplies and service lines line by line? That's why I wanted to pause.
You're asking for questions now?
I'm basically just looking for some direction from you guys to see how much detail you want me to continue with. I can either.
I think having the sheet provides all that detail.
That's what I
We've already
thought.
went through them before.
Yeah, I just don't want to waste people's time unnecessarily is where I'm coming from. Exactly, exactly. So one of the things I wanted to just kind of bring to your attention overall is looking at 87 of 90. When it speaks to the overall summary at the bottom, the overall revenue of 163 and the overall expenditures of 163-ish. We'll go with ish for tonight. One of the things I want to point out is that operating is 127 million. Special purpose is 20 million of that. So it doesn't reflect that when it's just rolled up into one figure. But when the document is submitted to the or when the ministry document is brought to you, that is where you see that difference. So I just sort of wanted to bring that to your attention because our special purpose does make up a fairly substantial portion of our budget now.
Is that broken out in this document for us?
No, because it's all that's why I'm pointing it out to you. This is our budget document. When the ministry document is created, that will then you'll see special purpose and operating. I just wanted to give you.
So what are those numbers again? Sorry.
So out of the 163, 127 million is operating, and 20 million is special purpose, which is a fairly substantial amount of special purpose, which of course is targeted. So that is unto itself each and every one of the special purpose funds that we have. So if anyone has questions.
Just on that, the calculation, of course it's going to be on teachers. Did you calculate that on an average salary cost?
That's correct.
So 61,000 is generally around what we're average, because of course with brand new teachers coming in all the time, the average.
Well, we actually, our average teacher salary is 76.
Oh.
And we're actually seeing that that may actually have to increase because costs are higher than we actually anticipated. We lowered the average teacher salary in the amended budget, 17-18 amended budget, and we're seeing the potential that that may have been lowered.
Too much?
Yes.
Okay, so you're working on 76 thereabouts?
76, yeah. So we will, I mean, we monitor that all the time, so that's something that we will look at again and potentially may have to increase back up into in the amended budget, but we'll determine that over the course of the next few months.
Yeah, I imagine January 1st with the scale bump up.
Well, there's where we've sort of taken that into consideration as well. I mentioned the CUPE rate here because we don't use an average, we use all the CUPE rates. With teachers, the teachers are getting a 1.9% increase now-ish. Yep. And then, right, so we've got to kind of account for that over the next budget year as well. Yeah, so the potential is that it may need to increase, but we are watching that, so that will be reflected in the amended budget for sure.
Thank you.
Either way it goes.
I just want to circle back around to what Rob's question was at the beginning and ask staff. I'm looking through these numbers and I don't see, and I'm going to say it's because I can't really understand it very well because I'm not a numbers person, but the mention that we have a budgeted surplus of $8 million, I'm just wondering where that is and what accounts for that, because we talked about this. I'm just trying to understand it.
Rob, were you talking about the local capital that we've added in here?
The piece that, and regardless, that's why I said I'm not going to be here to debate it with you.
I don't want to debate it, I just want to understand it. Is it in operating or capital?
It's in capital.
Okay.
It's been moved, so it's in capital. It's $8 million and it's anticipated.
But it's not a budgeted surplus in our operations?
No, that's yet to be determined.
And that's not staff talking to you either.
No, I know, that's why I wanted our staff to, that's why I was asking staff to clarify for me. So I'm understanding now that it's, yes.
And so that $8 million in local capital is an estimate. So that may change in the amended budget, but that is local capital. Different formats, so it was difficult to know exactly what you wanted to see.
I want to see a video.
You want to see a video? I'll work on that next time.
So I can't say I'm overly excited by your presentation.
I know, it always lacks
really
something.
Enthusiastic about it, It's really great to see.
I see myself all the time.
But what I want to do say is after your hard work and you going through it, I really like the format.
Okay.
Especially with the comments off to the
Good.
right-hand side and the greater detail here.
Okay.
I mean, it's all there if we want to go back and look at it. Right?
Totally.
And so we've been through this kind of before, so, I don't have a lot of questions. They're all the little pieces and parts are all sort of making sense and coming together, right? But, no, appreciate the presentation.
No, good, thank you. It was just, trying to figure out what exactly you wanted to see to make it all kind of come together. So, good. As long as it's clear, that's the most important piece. So then next week, it'll be the ministry document. And again, I mean, we've been bringing this information to you for, we've been talking about budget for a while now. So I don't know how much more detail you want to see tomorrow, numbers and all the slides and so forth, or if it's just sort of the ministry document and moving forward. That's all I'm sort of thinking of going forward at this point.
If there are no disagreements with that, what we'll be doing is bringing the ministry bylaw document to the board, to business committee next week on Wednesday, and then the bylaw to the board meeting the following week on Wednesday, where we would ask the board to do all 3 readings in one meeting and pass the bylaw. So if nobody objects, that's the process we'll now follow.
Mm-hmm.
Speak now or forever.
Excuse me, if I could also clarify, this is the partner group's last opportunity for questions.
Yeah, questions, if there's any other...
I won't be here next week.
You don't have any questions either.
Be on the speakerphone.
Oh, sorry, just a point of clarification.
Yep.
Secretary Treasurer, did you say next week, and then the partner groups won't have an opportunity to... Sorry, business committee, they will have an opportunity for feedback, but you said they won't? I'm confused.
Well, it's a business committee, so I guess if there are questions or clarification, but what we'll be doing is bringing the actual ministry bylaw document that you're all familiar with to that meeting. And then we'll, the following week, be presenting the actual bylaw for adoption at a board meeting, because we can't do that at business committee. So yes, I suppose there could be questions or clarification.
So yeah, so the partner groups can speak to this or the ministry document next week. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, I think what we were just saying, though, if there are any more significant questions, tonight would be the night for us to do that.
Oh, to get the answers.
Yeah.
Superintendent?
Yeah, and I just want to be clear. Yes, we can come out of the meetings at any time for the partner groups for the conversations. We have pushed this right back to the final pieces. So this is the opportunity. We took the time with the line by line to engage the partner groups to be able to do this. And so we're asking for any significant questions or comments to be made now so that we can prepare. We've got a Department of Finance that is waiting to transpose this into a whole nother document that's required for the bylaws. So we're just suggesting that if there's anything out there, we need to hear about it now.
And if we're, if the bylaw is assumingly passed on the 20th at our special board meeting, the deadline to submit the document is June 30th. So as Superintendent Blaine indicated, there isn't a lot of time left. We've pushed this out quite a ways.
And that was my comments at the meeting for clarity. Not here to try to say, have a debate about what needs to be added in and taken out. If the budget stays the way it is, I know that's at least it's stable. If there's any changes at meetings, where do you make the changes to and who does it impact? So I spoke about what happens in the next piece is September, not about what's going to happen, because this is a budget that needs to be rolled out so you can start your business, but there's always that amended piece that sometimes gets lost.
Thank you very much, Ms. Sutton.
Thank you.
There's always next year.
And the final piece of business, 11.1, Trustee Robinson. Sounds like me. Speaking about the Premier's Award for Excellence in Education, I spoke to this when I first became aware of it about a month ago, a little more than a month maybe, and suggested that we all look through our schools. And I really didn't get off the mark very early, and I haven't heard of others. However, well, I am working on two, Mandy Jones and Bill Taylor. Mandy has been teaching Hulkaminum for 34 years, I think, in this district. Bill Taylor is 17 at LSS. Bill's also very interested and very involved with First Nations stuff, and Margaret asked them to do a combined land-based program, and the two of them work together, and it's really amazing what they're doing. So I'm hoping to put a nomination together for both of them. The forms don't really work, but we'll make them work, I think. So I'll speak to Margaret later. I think we saw a perfect example of someone that should be recognized for this award tonight. And I am not a real Twitter person, but on Twitter I saw today that the staff at Brecon School spent some time, an hour or more, recognizing their two custodians. And both of the custodians were in the picture with a armful of cards and presents and best wishes. And I did speak briefly to CUPE, and sorry, Rob, I haven't had time or haven't made the time to follow up, but where I've sent an email to the principal involved. Those two custodians would be, I would think, a perfect example. So I think it's taken me a lot of time just working on the two teachers. I think what I'd like to do, I'll take responsibility to remind us to be constantly looking for next year and working towards, and wouldn't it be wonderful if we got a dozen? Certainly we've got no lack of people who would qualify and deserve this award. We just need, as a board and staff, to work a little harder, pointing out teachers and QP people and management, administrators. They're there by the dozen, I'm sure, and we just need, and I'll take responsibility for constantly reminding us to look around and start now for next year, getting nominations together. And that's my report. So, I think we've done it. Questions?
And I don't believe there are any.
No questions? Geez, would anyone move to adjourn the meeting? Oh, Jeff, thank you very much. And we have a seconder. Thank you, Noah. The meeting is adjourned.